Hello and welcome to Tar Heel Teachers at Home. I'm Marlo Artist, proud principal at Craven Early College and the moderator for this program. Tar Heel Teachers at Home is an interview series focused on engaging North Carolinians in conversations around education. Each week, I'm happily joined by a wonderful panel of educators, each one representing a particular subsection of education. We'll start our introductions with our elementary school co-host.
Hi, my name is Amy Tart. I've been teaching for 10 years. I currently teach fifth grade in Clinton City Schools.
Good evening. I'm Talicia Smith. I am the Cumberland County Schools Teacher of the Year and the regional runner-up for the Sand Hills. I currently work at Douglasburg Middle School. I've been teaching for about 18 years, and my current role is a multi-classroom leader for the science department.
Hello, everybody. My name is Andres Restrepo. I'm one of the proudest assistant principals ever. I work at JEF Webb High School, and I'm so happy to be here sharing this time with y'all.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Arisha Smalls. I'm the AIG Program Coordinator for Cumberland County Schools, and you can follow me on Twitter at Smalls Arisha.
Awesome. For this episode of Tar Heel Teachers at Home, we are chatting with Natalia Meija, who was recently named the NCCAT 2023 Empowered North Carolina Beginning Teacher of the Year. Natalia is the Multilingual Learners Teacher at Griffin STEM Middle School in Cabarrus County. Natalia, welcome to Tar Heel Teachers at Home.
Thank you so much for having me.
We are so excited to have you on the program, Natalia, and excited to learn about your educational journey. So you were able to spend a week at NCCAT as part of your experience with the Beginning Teacher of the Year program. What do you what kind of resonated with you, and what do you really remember from that time that you were able to spend with the other finalists for North Carolina Beginning Teacher of the Year?
I think one of the biggest things I took away was this idea of community within our schools and between other teachers. I really loved going to a place where there were a bunch of educators that were as like-minded as myself, and that we are empowered by education, that we want to create or we want to give our students the tools so that they can empower themselves, so that they can go out and create agency and advocacy for themselves. And that's very powerful because sometimes in the classroom, as we all know, especially towards the end of the year, we're all getting really tired and it's getting really hard to keep that smile on your face at 8 in the morning on Monday, or at 7:30 for our staff meetings. So to be around a bunch of teachers that were just excited to be there and to work for children, it was absolutely phenomenal.
Such a wonderful event. It's great that beginning teachers in our state have that time to commune, like you said, as part of that community. And one thing I thought was really powerful during your speech, you were able to shout out some of your friends and colleagues that you were able to meet and really share that stage with them. And I thought that really spoke a lot about the type of educator that you are in terms of, creating your own table and bringing other people up to the table and including. Why is that really important for you, Natalia, for you to be able to share that moment with other beginning teachers, not just making it about yourself?
Well, I think that's what education is all about. It's about uplifting, and it's about, in the words of Nelson Mandela, nation building. It's about building that community, that family. And I think that it's just part of the culture, that we need to create within schools. It's about all of us. If we win, the kids win. If we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, the kids are going to just succeed and flourish. And I think it's just about highlighting what amazing educators they were. Like, they inspired me. Like, I couldn't believe that I had been given such an honor and that I was going to be able to represent my students in such a way. And so I just think of all of them. They are also so worthy of having that title. I couldn't believe it. And it was honestly just a really personal email that I'd sent out to somebody at the time. And so it just felt right to share it with them because I just knew they deserved to be there just as much as myself, and they inspired me.
I think about some of the emails I sent. I'm like, what is she about to share with this email? But it was so well done when you actually read that email, and it was really perfect for the occasion. So, Natalia, tell us about how you actually pursued your career in education here in North Carolina.
Oh, that's a really good question. Well, it started out, I think, with my own educational background. I'm a multicultural, multi-ethnic woman. I am Latina, I'm first generation American, and just walking into the schools that I walked into, I didn't see myself reflected in the educators around me. And just now observing, it wasn't very culturally responsive, the practices that were being taught to myself. And they were just small, curt moments of recognition of my culture, usually during Hispanic Heritage Month. And in my life, I only had, up till college, two Hispanic Latinx Latina teachers, and one of them was my mom. She volunteered. Yes, she volunteered to teach in my classroom Spanish. And for me, it was just a moment of really seeing that there's a need in education for students to see themselves represented. These students deserve that. They deserve to feel a part of a family and part of a community. And I grew up not feeling that way. And I grew up definitely being told things in school, getting made fun of for, maybe bringing certain foods, my name. I would allow myself to be called Natalie constantly because I was so embarrassed. My brother was told once, "You're so lucky that there's DACA. You can continue going to college." So I would hear those things. We would hear those things. We would get told these things. My mother was told to speak English, not at school, but like these are things that were told to me outside in the outside world. And it's so interesting. In my home, I was so affirmed and I knew who I was, but I went out to this place called school, this place called the world, where I should feel safe to be myself, and I wasn't. And it made me pursue my education at UNC Charlotte. And there I was inspired by Dr. Biker to go to South Africa. And I really learned about power and privilege. And I learned about how we as a community can really form a family through Ubuntu, this idea of that I am because we are. And that resonated with me, this idea of all of us coming together and creating a full story, not a single narrative about who a person might be. Because every stereotype, it's incomplete. It's not a story. It's not a full picture of who a person and a community is. And so that truly inspires me as an educator. And that's why I walk into my school building every day. It's not because of who I am, it's because of who we are as a community and who my kids have made me as an educator.
That is fantastic. And having a diverse teaching force benefits all of our students across backgrounds. And so we're so happy that you're serving and so happy to honor you as the NCCAT 2023 Empower North Carolina Beginning Teacher of the Year. What questions do we have for Natalia?
Natalia, I loved your speech. I know you said that it was just an email, but just to echo what Marlo has said about how you included the people in your learning community and gave them a chance. What did you say? Have your moment, girl. Have your moment. Yeah. I love that. I love that so much. And I want to apologize for my ignorance, because you said something at the end of your speech. You said "si se puede," and my mind did not go to the originator. First, my mind went to "Gotta Kick It Up," which is a Disney movie about a Latina cheerleading squad, because that's a memory. So that's a memory from my childhood. And I was like, no, but she said Dolores. And then I started thinking about Encanto, and I was like, Dolores didn't say that. So I really had to go and figure out and research where that saying came from and where it originated. So just you mentioning it in your speech opened up something for me, an opportunity for me to learn. And so I want to ask you why that quote, "Si se puede," yes, we can, from Dolores Huerta, for our viewers who may not know, or maybe I should let you say who she is and why you chose to say that.
Oh, well, Dolores Huerta is such a big influence in my life. She is a Chicana. She identifies as a Mexican American, and she really led with Cesar Chavez, this idea, this revolution, to pay Hispanic farmers fairly. And they really talked about what pesticides and the chemicals that Mexican Americans were using in the fields and how it was actually really harming them in the development of their children. They were just fighting for the fair rights of people of color in this community in the US. And for me, Si Se Puede is just something that I tell my kids all the time. You know, you can do it. I know this system maybe wasn't built for people, you know, of all to succeed, but I know that you guys can. You guys, I have faith in you. I believe in you. You guys are multilingual. You guys are gifted. And so I'm always trying to tell my kids, yes, you can. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. It also echoes President Obama, who for me, obviously, he made such a big statement being president and his legacies that he really instilled in America. And I think it echoes hope. You know, it gives hope to people, because I think sometimes we just feel so down, and sometimes life just feels hard, because that's what life is. And when you say Si Se Puede, you remember all the people that came before you that said it. And I think it just resonates with this idea of who I am as a person. And, you know, yes, we can as a community, we can uplift each other, and we can make change in this educational system, which is so desperately needed right now, for sure.
Thank you.
Natalia, you brought
Natalia,
up,
congratulations again.
you go ahead. No, you go.
Okay. Natalia, I just congrats to you talk and talking about the educational system as a whole and it needing change. And hearing you speak, it's understood that you see equity within your classroom, and that's part of your goal as an educator. And so I'm just curious, you said a quote, and I don't want to misquote it, so I'm going to read it here. It says, "We need to do our part to use our voice to change the whole system." And that just resonated with me, because there's so many areas we know we need to work on. So when you say that, though, and you see the big picture, what are the things that you think of where we need to begin the work first? I guess I would say, where should we begin that work first as educators?
That's a really, really important question. I think one thing that's important that sometimes as educators we don't take part in as often is the understanding of how policy affects education. I'm not sure if that's maybe the first thing that we should do, but I think it's really important, because I think that educators don't often understand not understand, they don't often know what is happening in our General Assembly and how that is affecting us in the classroom today. Just to highlight a few bills that I was talking about recently, the SB 49 bill, Parents' Rights Bill, the HB 262, the busing bill. So pretty much the Parents' Rights Bill, it outs trans students. The busing bill, they want to rezone busing. So all those students that were taking to diverse or to schools to diversify these schools, they want to undo that. The HB 187 anti-CRT bill, the HB 188 school discipline, where, you know, principals will have the right to pretty much judge based on their judgment, you know, disciplinary actions for students. I think as teachers, we don't often talk about them. We may not know, and we may not realize that it's within our power to speak about them and to speak truth and light, because they do affect our classrooms and they do affect our kids. And I think that we need to find that voice within us to be outspoken, and to bring light out into darkness, because our classrooms sometimes are so often the only place where our kids feel loved and accepted. Not always, of course, but sometimes it is. And so just making sure that that place stays that place, because we tend to think of our classroom as the world, but all these policies will eventually encroach our little world, our little place that we've created, our safe place with our students. So I think that as educators, one thing I would love to see is teachers finding their voices and advocating in their own ways. It doesn't always have to be political. It doesn't always have to be outspoken, but in their own ways, that they find ways to advocate for their students through policy and just understanding it.
Natalia, you brought up Cesar Chavez, which I've got to call myself out. I was never taught about Cesar Chavez. And thinking back now that I am a teacher with a lot of diverse students, that was the first time a lot of my Latinx kids had heard of Cesar Chavez when it recently came up. And I realized, like you said, a lot of times it's only brought up in Hispanic Heritage Month. So how can we diversify our curriculum and make sure that those students are represented? What are some topics that you think should be included to make sure that the students see themselves in their education?
Yeah, that's so important because my kids, a lot of them actually didn't even know about Cesar Chavez themselves or Dolores Huertas until we started talking about them in my class. And obviously that was really devastating for me because a lot of my students identify as Mexican Americans and they really led the Chicano movement. So for me, it was obviously, like you mentioned, it was quite sad for me to realize that. And I think that that starts with just everyday small acknowledgments of a person's culture, of a person's language. I think it's as easy as just allowing the kids to speak another language in your classroom and not getting upset or not getting, I've heard a lot of teachers say this, and I understand that it comes from a place of, actual concern. They're like, I don't know what they're saying. And I completely understand that, but I totally have students who don't speak Spanish in my class, and I can tell when they're off task, or I can tell when they're being a little naughty. And so just allowing a student to have, agency within their language, I mean, that's so powerful. Another easy way to do it is to send books home in a student's first language. Research shows that if a student is strong in their first language, that will correlate over. There's a lot of cognates in English between Spanish, and if you understand the general rules of a language, that can transfer over. So I think just sending books home with your kids, and don't expect them back. It's a gift of love that you're sending out to these families, and just let them have it, and just tell the parents to read at home at night. Like, it's amazing. Just enjoy it, giving those kids that gift, that love of learning to read. And I think one of the other best ways that I would say, outside of, your classroom is just getting to know their parents. I think for me, it was really, kind of amazing to hear from some of the teachers when we had our Hispanic Heritage Festival that they said, this is the first time that I've ever met those parents before, or, this is so, creating those events and those spaces that these parents feel welcome. And I think that that starts with having someone in your schools who is all about community engagement and reaching out to those parents, and just having a honest relationship with them. And I think that starts with making a call home, sending an email home, and it will be through Google Translate. It may be maybe not your perfect Mandarin. It might not be your perfect Spanish, and it may not be your perfect, Thai. It might not be perfect, but it's a beginning. And I think it's just a way to show your parents of your students, I'm here for you and I'm here for your kids, which I think your kids see that, and they realize like, oh, this person cares, like they care enough about me. And then I would say another one is just my final one is definitely learning your students' names. I had a wonderful, wonderful student, and I won't say her name necessarily, but she was embarrassed by her name because it sounds like an American body part. And so the kids were making fun of that name. And so she started wanting to go by a evangelical or I guess an Anglican name, correct? Like an English name. And she started telling people that, and the teachers got concerned. And they reached out to me and they're like, Miss Meija, she's starting to go by this name. It's not on any of her papers. And I looked it up and I started talking to her about it. And we did research on her name. And in her own language, it actually means firstborn precious daughter. And so her name for her parents truly spoke about who she was as a person to them. And when we did research, she actually broke down and started crying. It was a moment of just crying and crying. And she was like, Miss Meija, I was just getting made fun of for my name, but I didn't know that it meant this to my parents. And since then, she has obviously, thank God, gone back to her true name, the name that her parents gave her. But it was a moment of shock to me that she was going through the same thing I went through. And I would have hoped that by now that legacy of, maybe shame around your name would have changed. But I could see that it was very open for her, and it was very painful. But just knowing your students' names and acknowledging that presence, and maybe even doing, an idea of like, let's talk about what your name means in your culture and what it stands for. But those are just a few ideas. There's a lot of things that could change, obviously, but I think those are like basic things that a teacher can do like right now, like stop, pause, right now you can do a few of those things.
Thank you so much. And I'm just amazed that you are a beginning teacher, because you sound much more wise than I would ever think. So, and I'm thankful the kids have someone like you. And I think we all have something to learn from you.
Thank you.
Natalia, there are a lot of things I would like to ask you and tell you. First of all, how proud I am of seeing another Latina, creating history. Just a little bit about myself. I am now the first Latino administrator in the county where I am, and it is for me it's kind of surprising because for some reason we are seen as foreigners, but if you see like the history of the United States, we have always been part of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but up to now, 2023, we're just opening some doors, and so
Mm-hmm.
in my research, I wanted to focus on some academic stuff that was not about being a Latino or not being a diverse educator, but my identity and the person who I am in this community makes me focus my work on that part, on being an activist, on who we are. And I'm sure that there are so many good things about the way you teach, the way you approach your students, more than just advocating for that diversity. But that will be part of you because you are marking that history, right? So in that sense, looking at the nature of your work, which is teaching English learners, right? Looking at the nature of your work, looking at who you are as an educator in the United States, and marking your starting year as a teacher with this great, recognition. This is gonna continue that labor or work of advocating for students and people of the community who are still working towards the recognition in this society. So, what do you think is one of the biggest challenges you have as an educator who is representing the Latino community? What do you think is one of those things that you have and that you feel that is the purpose of what you do? What is one of those challenges that you feel is with you all the time?
Oh, that's such a good question. Thank you so much. I think one of the biggest challenges sometimes is honestly feeling the need, not the need, or I think it's sometimes being asked to represent the whole community and the whole diaspora of the Latinx community. We are so large. We are a community that represents so many countries, so many languages. I know a lot of people don't recognize how many indigenous languages are spoken inside of Latin America. I personally am about 40% indigenous, 10% Black, and then I have the Spanish and Portuguese. And so, we are we're a very multi-ethnic group of people, and we come in all different shapes, sizes, languages. And so sometimes when people I don't want to say put me in the box, but they want me to speak for a whole community, it gets really like nerve-wracking. Like some people are like, oh, what's the difference between Hispanic and Latinx? And I'm in Latin American studies, so I can answer that, but it's like, not everybody identifies the same way. We're all so different. We all have different foods that we enjoy, that we love. And people sometimes immediately assume, and I have complete pride, but they assume that I'm Mexican, and I'm like, that's perfectly okay. I'm not Mexican. But let me tell you about where I am from and where my culture does, identify, because they'll immediately, assume and pinpoint me to a place. And so that definitely weighs heavily sometimes on me, because you can't represent a whole community, but you can do your best to advocate for your students and for those families. And that's another thing that I was going to say, as there's one other person in my school building that speaks Spanish, and we have a translator, Miss, I'm not going to say her name. She's absolutely phenomenal, but she works for 5 schools. it is so hard for her, bless her heart, to translate for all the schools. So I often find myself being the bridge between the community and my kids and our school. And that's really heavy sometimes. You can't do the work all alone, but then sometimes you just have to. When they call at 7 a.m. with a very important question, I'm not going to turn them away because I'm the only one in the school that can speak Spanish. Or if a parent comes in and I'm in the middle of teaching and they call me to come and translate and ask, it's important that these parents receive an equitable introduction to this school and feel a part of my community. And if that means that I'm the only one that can be there for them at that moment, that's what's going to happen. But I think that we as our schools can do a better job of diversifying our workforce and providing equitable means for parents to engage with our school as a community. And I think that can sometimes weigh heavily on us as bearers of our communities. And it can just weigh you down sometimes, but it can feel like a blessing because I know that I have a whole community that backs me. And that if I call on them, I've seen them rise, like the whole families come and show up for me. And that has meant a lot, those moments.
Arisha?
How did you know I had another question?
I know my job, okay?
I wanted to ask, I'm sure most of you are familiar with Harry Wong's First Days of School, and you being a beginning teacher, some of the first pages of that book refer to what teachers have in their minds before they actually start school, this fantasy of what they think it will be like and how quickly that fantasy goes away. Can you share with us some of the fantasies that ended up being true for you when you entered your career as a teacher, and maybe some that maybe fell a little short?
Ooh, that one's gonna make me think for a second. So, well, I think an obvious one is that I was really hoping to go into a school building and create change for my students, like inspire them to want to be better, to want to be a representation of who we are. I tell them brown excellence, like you are brown excellence in the flesh, live it, breathe it, you can do it. And that's something that has happened for me. Like, I think it's crazy that I can tell my kids, like, I love you guys. And they'll be like, we love you too, Miss Mejia. Like, that's just like, oh my gosh, I have like a bunch of kids that love me. Wow. Like, I can't believe that sometimes. It's like kind of surreal. And like I can see it in like the small things, like my kids now are showing me their quinceañera dresses and we're picking out colors and we're talking about these small moments that mean so much to us. And I can't believe that has come true for me. I think then maybe just being completely frank, I had hoped that I love teaching, but sometimes being a teacher is really hard. The administrative aspects of it, the pay, that's really rough on beginning teachers. And I think coming from student teaching, a lot of us, we're working for free. We have to pay for a lot of teachers now have to pay for their ed TPA. I'm really blessed. I was one of the last groups that got it paid for. But if you didn't pass, you were going to have to do it again. Then I had to obviously take my licensure exams. I have 3 licenses, so I had to pay for about 3 to 4 exams. It's hard to live on teacher pay. And I think that is something that has kind of disillusioned my work because it's like, wow, I'm a professional in what I do and I love what I do and I love teaching. Like there's some moments where I'm just giddy when I'm writing on my board because I'm like, oh my God, I made it. Like my dream, like I'm teaching kids and like they're getting it. They're getting silent E, like, whoa, we're doing it. Wow. But then like it hits you like all these moments of like truth, like, I live at home. because I can't afford not to, but I should be able to, and I have peers that are my age, like friends from college, that they are able to do that because they're not educators. I think of the backlash that educators can sometimes get, or the way we were treated during COVID. I mean, I didn't teach for a year because I could see it coming, because I student taught when COVID hit and I saw it coming and I was like, I don't think I can do it. Like, I don't think that I can put myself out there, like my mental health. And so I made a choice to step back from me. And that's really hard for us educators, which I'd say is another thing that I was kind of disillusioned by, I guess. We struggled to self-care and to put ourselves first. And that's so sad, because how can we care for others when we struggle to care and love for ourselves? I think it's a moment of, okay, we're building up this community, but what about my home? What about me? Like taking time to get to know and to love ourselves. And that's something I found that a lot of educators deal with, a lot of stress that we deal with. A lot of us want to go back to finding ourselves. And I feel like that's so sad that we're helping so many people find themselves and we're inspiring them to find themselves. And yet here we are doing that exact same thing, that we're stuck. And so those are, I guess, a few things, but I do have to say, obviously, I know for a fact I have the best job in the world. Like, I tell people, like, it doesn't matter what you tell me, I know I have the best job in the room. Like, I know. So for sure, I would still say, like, I always tell people, if this is what you really want, go for it. Just know that we wear all the hats. It's definitely true. We wear all the hats, and just keep that in mind.
Thank you for sharing that. I've been in education for 15 years, and I can relate to all the things that you are saying. And I'm sure you may already have this, but if you don't, I encourage you to find your one person. And so that one person is going to be the person that you dump on, but it's also going to be the person that fills you up. You're going to vent to this person, and they're going to hear you, they're going to feel you and understand you, but they're not going to let you walk away in a low place. You need that person for longevity in this career. And if you don't have that, find your one person. I'm going to out my one person because he's on here with me. So he is my one person in the morning. I just dump it all out before I go to work. And it goes both ways, and I hope that you have that. And if you don't, find your person, because it is necessary.
It certainly is. And Arisha and I have been able to be each other's person for 10 plus years. And so it certainly does make a big difference when you have that. Natalia, thank you so much for your authenticity, for sharing your story, sharing your passion. I'm walking away from this conversation very inspired about the future of education here in North Carolina, because we have phenomenal educators like yourself who certainly contribute greatly and will continue to do so. So we thank you so much for coming on the program, and you do have an open invitation to come back on the program and continue to share the great things that you're seeing in schools and the great things going on at your school. So please come back and join us again.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. I feel honored to be able to represent my students. So gracias. Thank you so much.
You represent them so well as other beginning teachers here in North Carolina. We'd like to thank our audience so very much for watching our program. We hope that you will engage with us on our social media platforms. Please follow us on Twitter. Our handle is @TarHillTeachers. Please like our Facebook page. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Visit our website, tarhillteachers.com, and on all of our social media platforms, please utilize our hashtag TarHillTeachers so we can find all of your great comments. I'd like to thank our wonderful group of co-hosts for joining us for this conversation: Amy Tart, Talicia Smith, Andreas Respito, and Arisha Smalls. And once again, we'd like to thank our wonderful guest for joining us, Natalia Meija, who was recently named the NCCAT 2023 Empowered North Carolina Beginning Teacher of the Year. We look forward to seeing you next time on Tar Heel Teachers at